Welcome back to the program here. It has been a fascinating night, really. We're just talking with Simone and monitoring the 6.9 earthquake in Northern California. There's still aftershocks that are showing up literally every few minutes. So still an active area, and we're going to keep an eye on that. And we welcome your thoughts on that in the next hour when we take phone calls for Michael Horn. Now, Michael Horn's been on the show before. He is the authorized media representative for the Billy Meier contacts, and he's got some new information, new updates. And I can't help but to wonder, in all of the prophetic information that he has talked about coming out of the case, if perhaps we have something that has to do with Earth changes, and maybe something else that's going on in Kiev and Crimea and gosh knows where else. So we're going to dive into that. And you may have heard him before on this program, but you haven't heard me interview him. So I'm going to come at it in a way in which no one else has. And I hope to bring sort of a new light to it. Because, I have my own kind of perspective, my own kind of organic way of asking questions, this sort of synchronistic, way that has no rhyme or reason, but in the end, we get there. So hang around for that. We're going to come right back, and we're going to get into all of it. This is Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast AM. And our guest right now is Michael Horn, the authorized media representative for the Billy Meier case. And books, yes, here are the books. And They Still Fly, The Silent Evolution of Truth. And we're going to hear about some of the latest updates. Michael Horn, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Well, I'm awake.
It's a start.
We haven't seen each other for a while.
We see each other here and there, and it's always interesting. You, sir, always have interesting information. So, first of all, any of your thoughts on these earthquakes? Anything in the Billy Meier material that comes to mind about what's going on?
Well, actually, when I heard it, I tuned in to catch the last part of your show, and I was hearing this talk about the earthquake, and I literally got a full-body chill on it for several reasons. Meier has been warning specifically about increased frequency and intensity of earthquakes and volcanic activity since 1951. And he has warned specifically that during the third millennium there were going to be extremely strong quakes. I mean, we can always. I have all this on my website on in the prophecies and predictions section. But because you asked specifically, yes, and this is for me an uncanny timing coincidence, and I'll tell you why. There are two very specific quakes that Meier warned about. In 2005, he was given information. We'll say once in this program, allegedly by the alleged extraterrestrials that play Iron, and they told him in 2005 that there was going to be a 9.0 earthquake followed by an enormous tsunami, and again earthquake and tsunami combination during the same event. This 9.0 would run for 5 minutes. It's going to hit off of the coast of Oregon. I think it's called the Cascadian Fault Zone. 3 years later, OSU, Oregon State University, came out with the same prediction 3 years after Meier verifiably published it. Now, they do not give dates on certain events that are predictions, meaning events that will happen with certainty, not prophesied like it could be changed, but events that are said to, will occur with certainty. One of the things, though, I was trying to do just recently, I was talking to some of my friends, and to try to ask them about the coming San Francisco quake. And for those that don't know anything about this in the Meier case, this is extremely controversial because in 1978, when the original investigative team, Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens, the late Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens, and Lee and Britt Elders, who were, and still are actually, private investigators. They work for Fortune 500 companies. They're very, very well-respected international investigators, private investigators, and they secure things against electronic espionage and what have you. And they went, Mr. and Mrs. Elders went with Colonel Stevens to Switzerland because they thought Wendell was going to be taken in by a hoax, a UFO case that he'd heard about. And over the years, what's happened is that, and out of Lee's own mouth, this is 99.99% authentic. He says, we cannot explain it any other way. Here's the point. In 1978, they were in the kitchen with Billy, when he talked about the coming San Francisco earthquake, and they said, "What are you talking about?" He left the room. He came back with a little yellow Kodak envelope with 11 photographs. And those photographs were put on the table so that the investigators and several of the other Swiss people could look at them. They showed very clear photographs of San Francisco, apparently in the midst of an enormous destruction. The top of the Transamerica building, that pyramidal shape, I think, had fallen to the ground and was cracked. There was smoke and fire all over. And they're leafing through 11 photographs, and they're trying to figure out, well, Billy, when does this happen? And he won't say anything.
Yeah.
And they're looking at, and they zoomed in their focus on the cars that they could see in the street. And Wendell Stevens, at the time, wrote that the cars were different than the cars of 1978. They were rounder in shape, most of them. The glass extended farther and much larger windshields, in some cases up into the roofline, and there were no external projections, meaning side view mirrors. I think many of us know that the concept cars, even of several years ago, were being developed and will come out without side view mirrors, and now even cars do have internal cameras for backing up, etc.
Yeah, I remember Wendell actually telling me this himself as I knew him, and he actually, this is the way I remember him saying it, was that the cars had wraparound windows. And so that always stuck with me because I'm sort of waiting for these cars to come out with wraparound windows. Now, I mean, I'm a big car buff, and we're at least 10 years away from something like that. I know that this idea, because we, structurally we still need these, these things that come up on the sides, but it won't be long before we can have something like that. And for him to say that, to me, sounds like we're still a ways off. What do you think?
Well, in my mind, I put it at 5 to 7 years because I was more focused on the lack of the side view mirrors on the outside. And I do have the article on my site, and I don't, we could start reading it, but I know we don't have a lot of time. But people can search on my website, and they can read what Wendell said at the time and all of that stuff.
Okay.
And basically, this is what their position has been in Switzerland, because what I was trying to say in introducing this thought was that I've wanted to ask them, look, I know you won't give us the date of this. Can you give us the year? Can you do something? Because basically what when I've talked to my friends over there, they said, look, people know. They've been warned. This is a classic line about all of the stuff in the Meier case. They have been warned about this, and if the people are still going to live in coastal areas, if they're still going to live in San Francisco and all, they're putting themselves at risk. And there's no upside for us to start. We don't want to scare people. We don't want to. An event happens, and then they say somehow you're responsible for it. I mean, it's that kind of thing. However, as you know, because you knew Wendell and you knew about this case, there is so much information in this case.
Oh, mountains of it.
Mountains.
Yeah.
And there's new photo analyses that show within the last 3 months that Meier's most controversial photo, UFO, the WC, the wedding cake UFO, which people have been deriding for 32, 33 years as just a garbage can lid with Christmas tree ornaments, is a full-size craft. And one of the most amazing analyses is several photos were recently reanalyzed and videos were made, computer modeling, and all this stuff was done by a professor down in South America. They took a nighttime photo where this ship is just an glowing orange against a black background, and he thought to put it into Photoshop. He brightened the contrast and the brightness, increased both, and now this is a 35-millimeter film photograph you can see on the Internet, and it shows now, instead of an orange object against a black background, it is a craft hovering above a gravel road with grass growing and a fence post.
Yep. I saw this in your latest film. It's called Did They Listen?
And Did They Listen? That's right.
And you show that. Now, that kind of reminds me of what another great Coast guest did in his book called Ringmakers of Saturn, Norman Berggren. He light blasted these photos from NASA, and he found in his research what he thought were ships that were making the rings of Saturn. It's an amazing little book. It's hard to get these days, but it's the same technique where you're just blasting these things with light, and sure, more is revealed. But let's go into your latest video called Did They Listen? Now, is this an extension of the silent revolution of truth, or is there new information in this besides, of course, some of the photographic?
Sure. Here's the thing with the photographs in the Meier case. The photographs that Billy Meier took started in 1964 in India. He took a series of photographs in the middle of nowhere, so to speak, in India, up to 8 of the craft. And it's on my website. This is all free stuff, folks. You can go search it and look for it. There's a called India, the Foundational Evidence, and there is one photograph in there that is so mind-boggling, and it's not of a UFO, but let me answer your question first.
Okay.
So the photographs run from 64 basically to about 81. After that point, he's not taking any more films, video, or photographs. And he had asked right around, I think, 1979 or 80 about, make more photos and things because people want more and more. He took 1,500 photos. It should be enough. And they said, look, you're entering the computer age soon. People are already giving you a hard enough time claiming you're somehow hoaxing all this stuff. As soon as the computer age and digital stuff comes in, it's pointless for you to take more photographs because then they're going to say, well, it's all digitized and what have you. So they said, this is it for the photographic evidence. For those who don't know, there's also sound recordings and metal samples, and he just is more than you could expect for one guy living in the boonies in Switzerland, and of course being in India at 64 to produce one-armed man to produce in terms of the eye candy. And the photographic evidence is the eye candy. It is what is, intended to at least capture our attention long enough for us to start delving into this case. So in the new film, which, as I think was banned now.
I don't. I was actually getting ready to ask you about that.
This is, to me, remarkable, and I would even say, folks, if you don't think the Meier case is legitimate, after looking into it yourself, ask yourself why a major university has banned it. It will not allow it to be shown.
Okay, well, hold on. Now, the first one came out, The Silent Revolution of Truth, several years ago, and a lot of people liked it. It's on YouTube. Now, is this an update to that movie?
Here, this is kind of like...
Or is it an extension? Or because I found some of the material, some of the same material in both.
Sure, because we go into... Look, it's like... Okay, to answer you, The Silent Revolution of Truth comes out in about 2008. In 2012, it came out with a film called As the Time Fulfills, which primarily focused on the prophetic information. I put 55 specific examples of Meier's prophetically accurate scientific information. And that's a 22-minute segment in my previous film, As the Time Fulfills. Now, this is the third in what I kind of view as an overview trilogy, meaning a today look at the Meier case, the evidence, the information, some of the prophecies, where we are, and I think I heard you mention before the break, if there's anything about the earthquakes or Russia, Crimea, I have in that film the full clip of an interview I did a year ago, January, with a retired physicist who I've known for over 50 years, who was a former skeptic of this Meier case, and now, because of the information about Russia in the Meier material, well more than a year before the Russians did this latest thing, and more is coming, if we can go into that, he gave us that segment in there where he says, Meier, it's astonishing, it's amazing, our military should be paying attention to what this man is saying, he's not delusional, he's not crazy. This man, Dr. Weinstein, had been in the military, and he said, Meier's information about Russia here is 1987, but in one of my blogs, I put up a prophetic, if you will, poem that Meier published in 1976 forewarning that Russia and China were then already working behind the scenes in an alliance, and that they would ultimately come forward and start chewing up the world, including the West, including right over here, which is why Dr. Weinstein, in looking at the 1987 material, and says, hey, wait a minute, how is it that this man pinpointed in 1987 the exact city from which the Russians will doubtlessly move their troops, because just a couple years ago, they finally moved their troops to that city, Arkhangelsk. This is coming in 1987 from a Swiss man living up in the mountains, dodging people who are trying to kill him because he's publishing UFO information and photographs, et cetera, et cetera. This is... Oh, my. I mean...
Yeah. Well, okay, so you have this third film that goes into this prophetic information,
right,
and some of the other photographic evidence. Now, which university, first of all, are we talking about?
Right. Arizona State
Arizona
University.
State. Okay, now, I'm not so clear to understand...
What happened?
Yeah, I mean, universities, they're not really... Do they accept people's videos about things? Yeah, what's the connection there?
Well, there's two things, and it's a very fine point of distinction. A university has no obligation itself to sponsor or show a film. But the unique situation here, I searched out and found the contact person for, to send the film to, who happened to be in a department that I can look it up while we speak and all of that. But she was involved with the philosophy and religion department, interestingly enough. And I actually had spoken to her on the phone. Very nice lady. And I said, blah, 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 and all. She said, well, send me the film. I'll take a look, I said, fine. She sends back afterwards a very terse statement about this film will not be shown, nor will any professor sponsor it. Now, I don't care about any professor sponsoring it or not. Shortly after that, by the way, the ASU Astronomy Club, which had extended me the invitation, they said, we'll screen the film. They then had to retract. They retracted their invitation to screen the film. Now, what could be in this film that could possibly be so threatening?
Well, do you think they were reacting to some kind of content in the film, or are they just reacting to the genre, to the whole, just the UFO issue?
She wouldn't say.
Ah.
She said, I spent time over the weekend watching it, and this film will not be shown. Now,
good heavens.
Listen, we understand that universities say, I said to a friend of mine, I said, if I was some sort of trendy, tattooed, twerking, tweetering, trans something cultural, sexual, I could get my own department at that university. But I've presented a film that obviously has gored some, sacred cows. Maybe the fact that the woman is very religious has something to do with it. She would not specify. She simply said, this film will not be shown. That's the first time I can find in 20 years.
That's pretty definitive. Maybe it was the music. We don't know. Well, we may never know exactly. But suffice to say, it is a continuation of what's being presented in this extraordinary case, the one-armed Swiss farmer who's had this ongoing contact with the Pleiadians, Pleiaren, as they call themselves. And this case is just filled with photographs and evidence and murder, assassination attempts on Billy's, 13 of them, and on and on and on.
22.
Right. It is just a mountain of evidence. And we're just coming up to the break here. But when we come back, let's just I just want to pick and choose a little bit some questions that, we can get into. And then let's talk about some of these prophecies and things that you say have been written and have been, already written up by Billy, copyrighted, as you say, and see if we can't pin down some of this stuff for real, because it is too big of a case. Now, we talked about Wendell Stevens earlier. He was responsible for writing and producing, I think, 4 or 5 books, the Contact Notes, which is the conversation supposedly between Billy Meier and some of these extraterrestrials, sort of word by word. And if you read those books, you get a sense of how big this is, because those books themselves represent, 5% of all these conversations that are still going on today. So it's almost too big to get our head around. But you know what? We're going to give it the old college try when we get back. You're listening to Coast to Coast AM. My name is Rob Simone, and your phone call is at the top of the hour. Coming up after the break, we're going to dive a little deeper into this conundrum and find out what we can see about the future, according to this one-armed farmer in rural Switzerland. Yep, that's what we like to do here. Stay right there. We're coming back after the break. Yeah, welcome back to the program. We are cooking through a lot of different topics here, and now we're on to the Billy Meier case, the massive case with all kinds of information just pouring out of it in every direction. And the man in charge of the info is, of course, the gentleman we're talking to now, Michael Horn. He is the authorized spokesperson for this case. It's so big it needs a spokesperson because Billy Meier, of course, is taking these iconic photographs and these videos and all this information. I mean, it just goes on and on. On the Talmud of Emmanuel, this sort of lost version of the Bible, it's massive. So we're going to sift through it, ask some questions, get the ball rolling, and then take your questions at the top of the hour, and I'll see what you think. If you have questions about this, what do you think about all that? Now, when we come right back after this quick break, we're going to ask Michael, I'm going to ask him about his latest film called Did They Listen? Because evidently Michio Kaku, a regular on this program, and Neil deGrasse Tyson have seen the film, and they have said something about it. So I'm interested to hear what their thoughts are and much more right after this quick break.
And I read English translations of, there's a lot of it that is still in German.
About some of the evidence. Now, what did Michio Kaku and Neil deGrasse Tyson have to say about it?
I'm still waiting to find out.
So they have seen it.
They both have received the film.
They've received
it. Priority insured. I've got the delivered dates and the whole thing. Michio Kaku.
Uh-huh.
I sent him several emails. Uh-huh. No response. I had set this up with him, sending him emails before I sent him the film as well. Mm-hmm. Let me explain why I'm probably not going to get their feedback on it. There's no upside for these people, even the best of the scientists, at this point, to comment on the Meier case. And I want to make this particular statement, and I'm glad to, expound on it, but let me put it in a nutshell. The Billy Meier UFO case is what the UFO cover-up is actually really and completely about. It is not about Roswell. There is nothing left to disclose about the cases, real as some were, like Roswell. There is no way to force the government, which for the most part doesn't know, and those that do know cannot be forced to reveal anything about Roswell from 60 years ago or whatever. The Billy Meier UFO case is what the cover-up is about. It is the most suppressed, attacked, ignored case. You will not find it in the mainstream media. It won't be on Ancient Aliens. Michio Kaku is not going to refer to it, even though his reporting on Fukushima, which is spot on. By the way, he's brilliant. Great guy. His reporting on Fukushima is echoing what Meier was told and published within 5 or 6 days of the event. We have, some of that, of course, in the film, too.
Uh-huh.
People have to understand, if we're going to continue to chase and focus on lights in the sky and nonsense about the extraterrestrial presence on Earth and millions of contactees and alien hybrid babies, we are going to miss the boat big time, because the Meier case is about our future survival. He is anything but a, quote-unquote, simple one-armed farmer. This man knows more about sciences and everything else than you can imagine. And I want to give you an illustration of something about the sciences and about proof in this case, if I may.
Well, I just want to say, why did you have the question here?
Because
to ask you,
it is a question that we should put out publicly.
Hold on. It says, what have Michio Kaku and Neil deGrasse Tyson have said about the film? And, of course, they haven't said anything. So I was under the impression, the way it's a little misleading, and I apologize for asking that, because if I had known they haven't seen it, I wouldn't have asked it. Now, did you send one to the president, too?
No.
I mean,
the second half is a typo. It shouldn't have been in there. What have Michio Kaku and Neil deGrasse Tyson said about the film is what the question should be. So I'll take responsibility for that.
All right. Well, then let's just move on. But, yes, Fukushima, you mentioned. I want to talk about that because it's huge, and Michio Kaku has gone on publicly and talked about it in great detail, and the fact that we know now that there is an unknown amount of corium still sifting through the bottom of these chambers is highly disturbing. We have 3 complete meltdowns What did the Billy Meier case say about Fukushima, and how prophetic was it?
Well, okay, I'll be glad to say. But the prophetic part first, let me tell you that I think it's 1958, Meier is warning that the dangers that we're going to face will be from radiation and atomic energy plants. As you may have seen in our film, he has warned that all nuclear power plants must be forbidden. We are going to, we're so in deep already because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Those explosions have already set in motion many things that our scientists either don't know about or don't talk about: genetic mutations, tremendous damage. A lot of the lung cancer that has been attributed to smoking is actually sourced from radiation, according to the Playaran, that we've also been snowed on that stuff. But if you want the information on, Fukushima, I've got a page here, and they call it, I think they said it's already a super ultra worst case possible scenario. Here we go.
Yeah, it's 50 years. They've just said that it's going to take to clean up, which means it's probably going to be closer to 100. Now, this is their reporting.
Right.
And it's still very early days. So, it's a big problem.
Here's what they told Meier on the 19th of March, 10 days, week, whatever it is afterwards. Your assumption is right that the so-called super worst possible case scenario has already occurred, being that very dangerous and extensive radiation is being emitted from Reactor 3, in which the dangerous plutonium is exposed, and which not only spreads over wide regions, rather also spreads out into the sea and seriously contaminates the sea as well as fish and other sea creatures, which has manifold deadly consequences. It is therefore a deliberate lie from those in charge that the disaster has not yet happened in the named form. And the occurrence of the now threatening, this is 2.5 years ago, now threatening ultra worst possible case scenario, as you call it, is only a question of time. The measures which are taken for the cooling of the reactors and so forth, and which are meant to prevent everything, only correspond to useless acts of desperation. But also bear in mind that with this, the water which is taken in desperation from the sea to use for cooling, on the other hand, involves great danger because the seawater's salt generates dangerous effects which impair the cooling process, and the radioactive particles, which are blown all over the place by the wind, actually spread around the Earth. We have already been able to detect 2 days ago on March 17th, 2011, therefore last Thursday, such radioactive particles in the northern area of Europe as well as in Central Europe.
And when did he write this?
This is 19th of March, 2011. 3 years ago.
Right. Now, the Playarans have information from the future, right?
Yes.
They are able to dive into these different realms and different sort of dimensions, and they've taken Billy, as you say, as they say, into the future and into the past?
Yes. So they claim.
So they
I
claim.
cannot prove that, by the way.
I know. This is just what's the information that is coming forth. Now, I'm wondering if the Playaran, if they're able to do that by their own admission, are they tinkering with our past? Are they tinkering with human timelines? And if so, where does the sort of manipulation start and stop with them?
No. Let me explain my understanding. And I'm going to say hello to my friend Bob, who just sent me a text. He's listening to you guys, KFI, as he's driving back from Arizona to California. The Playaran have made it very clear you cannot not alter the past one iota. This is more, pardon me, New Age nonsense is the way they put it. They cannot alter our future unless, if they did something now that would alter some outcome, you could say, well, they alter our future. They are not interfering. They're not going to. We are doing a sufficient job of completely screwing ourselves up. Their obligation, which is a self-obligated mission, if you will, is to assist us by giving us information, not just the prophetic, but ultimately to direct us. See, in my opinion, it's a three-stage process. Here's the eye candy. Oh, look at those UFOs. Oh, no, they're just objects, they're models, they're hanging on strings, whatever, controversy. Let's do that for 20 years, 30 years. Then let's start exploring the prophetic information. Oh, my gosh. You mean can you prove he wrote this then? Yeah, we have the copyright. Oh, my gosh. Well, why? What's the reason for this? It's to get us to look at what's called the spiritual teaching in the case. That's a non-religious, non-belief system thing. No rituals and superstitions and angels, gods, saints, and all the rest of the imaginary stuff that human beings have created over the millennia to turn their power over to. The Pleiaren are not going to take that power. They don't want it. They're not going to mess with us. They're not going to land. They're not contacting anybody else. There's no extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Whoa, what's this about? What about the future? It's up to us. And the whole reason for the case is to get humanity to realize that we have completely abrogated our responsibilities to ourselves. We do not know how to think. We don't realize that the law of cause and effect governs this universe, and that we as individual beings are creating this destiny. No extraterrestrials are doing it, no angels and invisible masters. There's no ascension. We're not floating into the fourth dimension. We're not getting our light bodies for a few billion years. And this is all the distraction and all the entertainment of the UFO industry that churns out this stuff and keeps people from waking up and going, oh my gosh, what do I as an individual do? I'm so powerless. Well, no, you're not. And this is where the information goes. And I don't mind substantiating and saying, okay, here's this prophecy, and here's this prediction, and this is when it came true, and here's how we can prove that it was published. And, honestly, it's like with the UFO part, like you said, well, you show these photographs and the new photographs analysis in the film of the wedding cake craft. I don't even care about UFOs. I was within 20 feet of a Pleiaren monitoring craft in Brazil, October 3rd, I think it was, 2011, when I was living in a little cabin up there, 10 at night. I saw it. It was within 20 feet of me. And then prior to that, in 2009, I received a document, information directly from the Pleiaren, passed through Billy to me, that prevented me from messing things up, stepping into a trap with a guy named Cal Korff. It turned out to be 100% accurate. Billy didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it, but they looked into the situation. There was a contact with Billy. He typed it up, and he sent it to me, and we got out of the way of it. So I have personal, anecdotal. This is purely anecdotal. It's my personal thing. Oh, it happened. No, it didn't happen. Go to the material in the case.
Okay. Well, let me ask you then. If you say the Pleiaren are not interested in affecting what happens here in the timeline as far as being directly responsible for it, didn't they send a letter in the 70s to the president?
Yes.
Sort of laying out a bunch of guidelines and things. How does that play into their sort of non sort of a contact
right.
or intervention?
Here's a beautiful thing about that. I said to Meier, and this is going back about 6 or 7 years, I said to him, I think that the Pleiaren really didn't understand us now, for the longest time. And Billy looked at me, he says, they really didn't. Because if you read that letter, and I have it somewhere on my website too, to President Jimmy Carter, anybody would know that they were not going to go for that contact. You know why? Because in there, in this poorly translated letter, if I may say, they're saying, we will establish a contact with the government of the United States and its president through our representative, Billy Meier, under certain conditions. You may not molest him. You may not try to attack our ships, et cetera, et cetera. And you must, here's the one that you're going to get, people are going to go nuts. But you must tell your populace, your citizenry, that all of their religions are built on lies and imaginary things. I read that and I said, Billy, what? Jimmy Carter, the Baptist, they sent this?
Yeah, that's a pretty tough ask right there.
It is, and here's the thing. And he said, you have to understand, they were not allowed to look deeply into people, to invade people's personal space, personal consciousness. It's an infliction upon people's free will and privacy, and they respect that. Only later, when it became necessary and they could understand, did they understand that they didn't understand how much we lied to ourselves and to each other and how much we lived in illusion. And I said, well, okay, but still, their forefathers have been monitoring this world for a long time. Couldn't they get a clue?
You would think that their whole thing is, well, we're not going to show up en masse because it would send too many people into a state of panic. And then they turn around and ask the president to sort of declare all religions null and void. That doesn't seem to...
Here's the beautiful part. and I say this over and over, wherever human beings are involved, and they are human beings, advanced as they are, things can and will get screwed up.
In case in point, didn't they give Billy Meier a big gemstone when Billy was saying, I need some money? And that sort of turned out like a sitcom?
Well, you know, they gave him a bunch of various crystals that, and what they said was, look, the only difference between these crystals, you know, various stones, and what you have on Earth is that these stones will not be contaminated with all of the negative forces, because, as you know, gemstones and various crystals and stones are hold and magnify, you know, vibrations and frequencies, and your world is so enshrouded in negativity that we also recommend that people don't wear jewelry and don't possess all this stuff and, you know, wear it around their throats and their hearts and the rest, because the forces on some of these things are extremely negative. And you know there are stories of what is it, the Hope Diamond or this or that. You know, the people that possess this diamond die mysteriously. There's reality to that kind of stuff. And so I don't know what he did with those. Those kind of stories were interesting to me, but I was much more interested in.
Well, no, didn't he say he needs money and they gave him a stone?
I think they gave him some stones.
And then he tried to sell it. And then they asked him for the receipt.
You know more about it than I do.
And they didn't have the receipt. And next thing you know, the cops are there, and he's in trouble.
Oh, he's had lots of weird things happen.
I mean, it's so funny because you think of these play-art. I mean, they are incredibly advanced as far as the information that you're putting forward. And so from the case, and they have these incredible beam ships, and they're flipping back and forth of dimensions. Yeah, you would have thought that maybe it would have gone better as far as some of these things. And
some things they knew. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and, you know, you always have a caller say, well, what about them Dean Martin dancers? And I go, okay, here's it, you know. Famous case here. Meier couldn't be killed. They tried 22 times. Last time I was there, I was in a little shed working, and one of the windows had a hole in it. And I said to somebody, hey, what's that? And they said, well, that was the last attempt on Billy's life several years ago. We decided to leave it there. You know, I mean, so they tried to assassinate his character in every possible way. And you'll find the Internet, there's no shortage of all the armchair experts who want to tell you, and tell me, I should say, why Billy Meier is a hoax. And I've been to Switzerland 14 times. I've spent hours with Billy, his family, friends, other witnesses. As I say, I've seen the ship myself. You know, it's like, this is real. But Billy never brings the stuff forward himself. This thing with finding the image on the wedding cake ship, he never mentioned it. 33 years later, some guy throws it into Photoshop and on the prophecies and predictions. But my point is this, with the Dean Martin dancer thing. Meier took photos, a couple, of Asket and Nira, two of the extraterrestrials. These things apparently got manipulated. Now, people don't have to believe it, but if they go to my website and they look at the document, you'll see the analyses and all the reasons why they're not the same photographs of those dancers, why there are no cathode ray tube lines on Meier's photo, because he didn't take his photo off of a TV screen. It goes on and on and on. However, even more beautifully than that, in one of Wendell's books, and you mentioned, you know, he transcribed a lot of those contexts, Meier asks, but because they say to him, in America there are these two, you know, dancers, singers that are doubles for Asket and Nira. I think they told him that like in 75 or 78. And he says, oh, I'd love to see that. And they said, no, for certain reasons we're not going to go into that. Then it's 10 or 20 years later that the Asket Nira photos come out, and Meier's, you know, walking into the rotating blades again because people are claiming it's a hoax. They knew 10, 20 years before that the photos are going to be manipulated, but they don't protect Meier from a lot of that concept.
And that kind of lends credibility to some of these cases. When someone's being attacked and someone's, you know, they're doing everything they can to sabotage them and, you know, put in bad information into the system, it actually says, well, wait a second, they wouldn't be doing that if there wasn't something here. It's kind of like the crop circles. It's something you can't cover up. I mean, you know, the bona fide ones. Yeah. So the only thing you can do is just muddy the whole field.
Can I tell you a quickie on this?
You've gotten about 35 seconds.
Okay, anyhow, really quickly, I was at MUFON last year. A crusty guy comes up to the table where I've got my, you know, Meier stuff. He's, you know, shaking his head no. I said, what do you do, sir? What is this about? You're, you know, grimacing at me. He said, I'm a retired judge. And I said, well, can I step into your courtroom here? And he said, yes. And I know we don't have the time for the whole story. It's in the film. But I showed him convincingly that Meier published specific scientific information, copyright proven, before NASA did. And then, of course, he went and bought a bunch of films and stuff.
Right. I've heard that story. Basically, you said, look, if this was a court of law, would my evidence stand up? And he agreed with you. Well, okay, let's jump back into the phone calls after the break. More with Michael Horn. His website is theyfly.com, and that's linked up right now at coasttocoastam.com. Stay with us. Much more to come. Welcome back. This has been a pretty extraordinary show so far. Right in the middle of it, we saw a 6.9 earthquake happen off the northern coast of California. And then just about the same time, a 6.3 near Oaxaca, Mexico. And reports of people feeling it as far away as Richmond, Virginia. So it's been quite an eventful night. No injuries or destruction yet reported. So hopefully everyone will be okay if you're up near Eureka. We've already gotten reports that everything's okay. So we're carrying on. We're talking with Michael Horn about the Billy Meier case, and it is an opportunity for you to call in and ask your question about this case. I know there are people on both sides of it, and it is worthy of discussion, especially when we get the opportunity to talk to Michael himself, because there's so much. We're going to try and find out about the best new prophecies and predictions so we can have them on record, because it seems like events are, speeding up. Does that feel like to you? We got Russia invading and earthquakes and all kinds of stuff going on. So let's get some of this on record, and your phone calls right after the break. Welcome back to Coast AM. Your phone calls in this hour. We're talking with Michael Horn. And Michael, give us an idea of some succinct sort of predictions that we can say now and see where we're at in the future.
Well, I laugh about that, succinct. Meier has, fairly voluminous amount of prophetic and predictive information. And people, of course, look, I understand. We want, not only do we want the eye candy, but we want the titillating stuff. I've been telling you, I enjoy reading stuff, and then I come to a point where I'm going, now, wait a minute. Billy's been writing this stuff literally for over 60 years. He has been warning. He's the first guy to warn about climate change, global warming, the increase in earthquake and volcanic activity tied into mining and oil extraction. And he warned about AIDS by name, plastic credit cards, 2 U.S. wars with Iraq, cellular phones, and that every home would have a television and computer, and it would be interconnected electronically around the world. He wrote that in 1958. That document, that whole bit of prophetic information, is in a 1958 letter. There's 162 separate things in there. If we go to the core of this, and I feel I'm going to be irresponsible if I don't put it this way. We've been warned. Atomic energy is beyond toxic. We cannot get rid of these effects. The BP disaster, we covered that in the film too. That stuff is still going to affect us. These things don't disappear. I can go into stuff here and start reading, and or pointing you to it, and it becomes like doom and gloom all over again.
Well, that's the message you're saying, is that it's a cautionary.
It's to get us to move our consciousness. Like, go back to your great question before about the Pleiaren intersecting, interfering, influencing. Yes, in the sense that they said, look, working hand in hand with Meier. See, Meier in his own right is a prophet. I mean, that simply means somebody that foretells. His track record is impeccable, and it's specific, voluminous amounts of specific stuff. Okay. The Pleiaren contributed to his prophetic and predictive information in the departments of the sciences, where they would take him and show him stuff. I mean, I think it's 1982. He's on a craft, and he's looking out at a planetary alignment, and one of the ETs, Quetzal, says to him, well, if you come over to this screen, you can move these things. He describes three-dimensional holographic technology, touch-screen technology in 1982. So we come down, Rob and audience, to some core things here. is this real? You determine that for yourself. I'm there. 35 years of investigating this and all the debunking attempts and skeptics and all the scientists that won't come public, some that have, and are authenticating this stuff. But if it's true, why? What are they trying to tell us that, and have they told us? Yes. How do we settle down all of our environmental problems? And, for instance, in the film, we point out, Meier says it himself too, the answer to our energy needs right now, to an enormously high percentage, is deep geothermal energy. Not let's raise millions of dollars for free energy and keep the scam going. Free energy, yes, of course, they use free energy, but we're not there yet. We're not going to be there in time. If we keep polluting and contaminating and destroying ourselves with all this stupid oil, and gas and coal.
Yeah.
So deep geothermal is being used in places like Iceland, some other places, Switzerland, and there's a company in California. There is an inexhaustible source of energy that comes up in the form of heat from the center, or deep in the earth is enough. We don't have to go to the core. It turns turbines and produces electricity till the cows come home. We find alternatives for synthetic lubricants and things. We start to perhaps use the abundant silica for other things that we're currently using petroleum for. These are practical, down-to-earth, get your head straight people. You're human beings. We've been there. They told Meier in all this Fukushima stuff, in that article, it's on my site, they said, look, we lost 43 million people in our world some long time ago with this atomic power plant stuff ourselves because meteorites struck, and then earthquakes will destroy these things, and you people are building these idiot things on fault lines and near the seacoasts like Fukushima, and that you've had accidents that have been unreported to you.
Yeah. So, well, this is the problem because people want this. There has been technologies that have been developed that could end our dependency, but there is such a stranglehold on this earth and more wealth and power is going into fewer and fewer hands. We are up against a battle that we're struggling to overcome to get to these cleaner energies.
But we're also up against a battle with well-meaning, well-intended people in the environmental fields, in the so-called New Age or New Thought, paranormal UFO, people who are also have ideas that run counter to some of the stuff that these people, the player, and I'll give you a great example. My friend Matt texted me, and he said, look, tell him about, this core of the problem here. And this will drive people crazy. The Playaran and Meier have said for the longest time, the core of your problems on your planet is that you reproduce at such an alarming rate as you outstrip the planet's natural, nature-given capability to not only feed you healthily without, all this contamination that you're doing, but to dispose of the waste products of all the humans and the animals bred for the production of all this. Listen, they told Meier eons ago, yes, of course, eventually you'll grow meat because meat contains great nutrients. There's moral questions to it, and it's economically and environmentally crazy to keep breeding animals, all the methane, all these. We don't want to hear that we're overpopulated. We don't want to hear it. No, it's the elite wants to wipe us out. No, we're doing a great, service to ourselves here. We're wiping ourselves out by just boxing ourselves in ever-increasing numbers where people are in strife all over the world fighting for resources.
There's, of course, a lot of problems that we are focused on, not only in specific countries, but globally. And this world is getting smaller and smaller every day.
The water situation, Rob.
And we need help. I mean, if it's not just bringing attention to it, which is helpful, but no, we need to organize this. Well, you know what? I'm not the only one who wants to ask you questions. Let's jump on the phone. Let's go to west of the Rockies. Jill is in Scappoose, Oregon. Welcome, Jill.
Hi there.
Hi. You're on with Michael Horn.
It's good to talk to you because I'm a little worried about this 9-point whatever that's running along the Cascadia line.
6.9.
I live in Scappoose, which is at sea level. I'm wondering what hill do I run to get out of the way?
This is a difficult question, Jill, because as human beings, we're very resistant for many reasons. I'm among them.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I say human beings, including all of us, we're resistant to change. We don't want to hear that where we're living is dangerous. We put it off. We do funny little things in our mind, and we move things onto back burners. We've also it's no comfort to you, but that we've been warned that in the La Palma area on the west coast of Africa, that volcano is also going to erupt unless humans interfere with that process by grading down the volcano side, the west-facing side. Otherwise, 1 trillion tons of mass will send a huge tsunami to the east coast. But you're up there in that Washington area,
Oregon.
Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
Oh, right there, okay. What can we...
On the Columbia River. I'm
well,
a mile from the Columbia River.
Let's look at it this way. If and when that earthquake and tsunami hit, 9.0 for 5 minutes, if you're in that area, if one is in that area, the human body is not meant to survive a shock of a 9.0 running for 5 minutes. And again, I'm not in the doom and gloom department. I'm saying we've been given this information. It's uncomfortable. What do we do? Do we keep allowing things to occur without acting? And unfortunately, like Meier says in one of these things in the prophecies, that even when certain events happen, he says, and in the third millennium, when parts of the continents disappear and people have to flee to the mountains, yet their sense of the catastrophes will only be of short duration because they'll forget everything again quickly and make an effort to rebuild in the same place.
Well, I'm legally blind, so I don't see really good.
Yeah.
And I can't drive a car anymore. So, I'm wondering, who do I get that's going to run me up the hill?
Well, I hear you.
You have neighbors?
I'm 66 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm about George's age. And
he probably doesn't want anybody.
I'm thinking, maybe I just kiss it goodbye and say, it's been nice knowing you.
Well, Jill, don't you have neighbors and don't you have community that look out for each other up there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We happen to be in a gated community right now.
Okay.
And so I just haven't, we've only been here for a couple of months, so I haven't gotten to know the neighbors that well.
Well, I'm sure once you do, then you'll probably, feel a little bit better about things.
Yes, hopefully.
I hope so. Thanks for your call, Joe. I appreciate you calling. Michael, you mentioned that Billy is a prophet. Now, isn't he the reincarnation of some pretty significant prophets of the past?
Here's how I put it. According to the information in this case, because it's something that neither I nor anybody else can prove, nor, of course, disprove, but yes, according to the information in the case, Meier's spirit, not his personality, since we are never the same personality, Meier's spirit has enlivened 6 previous prophets before him, and their names were Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. It's controversial enough. Wait a minute. I said Emmanuel. Who's that? Isaiah 7:14, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. New Testament, Matthew, it's 123 or 126, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. So this is yet another element in this case that drives people bonkers, because basically what's being said in this case, that they put it forward very plainly, there was no man named Jesus Christ. There was a man named Emmanuel, as foretold in Isaiah, and he was a great prophet and teacher. He was crucified. He knew that was coming. He survived the crucifixion. Afterwards, he traveled to India. There's a tomb there for Isa, or great. And there's the interesting thing about that tomb: 2 human feet marks were carved into the base of the tomb with nail, crucifixion nail images or carvings in the middle of them. Mm-hmm. And I think the legend on that tomb was something like, "Here lies a great teacher who was crucified in his own country and came here to teach us," type of a thing. And there's a lot of information. We even have the Paul Davids movie Jesus in India, and
right, the definitive movie. And didn't they find some gypsum there?
Yeah, well, that was when Meier was working with a man named Issa Rashid in 1964. They were led telepathically by the Plejaren to a hillside, a burn, and there was this little hole in the side. They dug out and dug their way in. It was an ancient tomb. Stones were on the floor that covered the floor. Meier and Issa Rashid, lifted stones until they found what Meier kind of knew in advance was going to be there for certain reasons, and these were resin-encrusted, animal skin-wrapped scrolls written in Aramaic. Isa Rashid had been, if you will, chosen to be involved in this. He didn't have direct contact, but the play Aaron had impulsed him because he could read Aramaic, and he also read and wrote in German. He was given these scrolls. Over a period of years, he translated a portion of them, sent them to Meier. They were published in German and then in English as the Talmud Emmanuel. They attracted the attention of a man named James Deardorff in Oregon, a professor who thought it was a Bible hoax, and he went out to debunk it. And he published a book subsequently called Celestial Teachings, and his conclusion was this is the original writing upon which the book of Matthew is based, not the other way around. It resolves all sorts of contradictions and questions that were raised by scholars, and in addition to 125 additional questions that were published or raised prior to that were resolved, after the Talmud was published. All this stuff in his research, he said, look, this resolves all these issues in Matthew. This is the real deal. Now, there were errors in the translation and all, and a new German language translation just came out. We don't have it in English yet, except that we know that Meier and the play Aaron put in additional information in the foreword, informing that there were 17 female disciples to Emmanuel, also known as JC, and that these, the women's work was expunged, of course, when they created the New Testament and changed this to the personality of Jesus. This is, the information in the case. And Mary Magdalene was an intimate of Emmanuel's, but she was not his wife. Meier said that Emmanuel married when he was in India, when he was at about 48 years of age. His mother died, Mary died, and he married a woman, an Indian woman, bore, quote-unquote, numerous descendants, one of whom was a son named Joseph, 70 years after the crucifixion, brought the original scrolls to Jerusalem, went to the tomb, put them along with something Gabriel had given to Emmanuel, which was a piece of gypsum, and there were small carvings that the Indian healers had, three Indian healers had been brought in to help resuscitate him after the crucifixion, because in those missing years that we don't know about from religion, Emmanuel was in India. He was studying with adepts there and people who were advanced in meditational technique. He was taught by, earth people as well as Gabriel.
That's the story that he went on there, and there's a lot of traditions that talk about his travels there and, temples and things like that. Well, let's jump back into the phones. We've got Josh, the wild card line, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Welcome.
Good evening or morning, wherever you are, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's a pleasure to be on, and sadly, my program's running a little bit behind, so I didn't know who was on at the time. But I do have a good question for this smart individual.
Yes.
He says that this gentleman that he works with is like a prophet, or is a prophet. And so, does he see anything in our immediate future that would necessarily jeopardize humanity? And on a side note, does it have to do anything with aliens or UFOs? And if they are to be in our future, are those UFOs physical or extraterrestrial? And I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, let me go backwards on this about the ET thing. Look, the universe is filled with good and bad, light and dark, happy and sad. Right now, our greatest dangers come from us, and this has been the case for some time. So-called aliens, extraterrestrials, or what have you, who are not walking on the Earth, and they're not working for our government under the sands in Nevada or any place else, a very ludicrous idea. They don't want to. There's no reason for them to interfere. Would there be and will there be threats from hostile races? Undoubtedly, in the course of this evolution and technology, we will have to confront that, but that is not in our immediate future.
Well, okay, let's hold it right there because we're just up against a break. And when we come back, more phone calls and more revelations about, really, the biggest case in ufology, Billy Meier. My name is Rob Simone. This is Coast to Coast AM. Stay right there. Yeah, welcome back to the program here on Coast to Coast AM. The final half hour with Michael Horn. We're taking your phone calls. And Michael, you there?
Yes.
I'm wondering about this story that you told me a while back. There were so many sightings where Billy Meier's ranch is up near Schmidt-Rudy. And at one point, because you said there's a lot of sort of government attention, that they put up some sort of surveillance tower on a hill near his home?
Actually, what you're referring to is there's a military base literally just up the road from Billy, overlooking the area where his home, his property is, and the CIA took that over in the 70s, and they were monitoring him from there, and they actually got some of their own photos of the craft. They know it's real. This case is known to be true at the Vatican, for gosh sakes. They know who Meier is, and they are not happy about it. But
well, how do we know the Vatican knows?
The Play-Arn have let Meier know.
Coming from them.
They said, by the way, the Vatican is now starting to incorporate some of your teaching in trying to recruit more members to the faith. They're going to, create it. It's a whole story in and of itself. But suffice it to say, according to the information in the case, that the Meier case is known in very high intelligence circles. The CIA monitored him from there. They no longer use that base. I had asked Billy about 5 years ago. I said, the CIA is still up there. He says, no. He says, their technology is very sophisticated. By the way, that Meier published the whole thing about the NSA and Microsoft and all that stuff years ago. It's on my website. You can just search NSA. You'll find the article before Snowden came out with this stuff. So this is another thing. And the SOG team from the CIA and how they foment, wars and assassinations and stuff. So Billy's been a target for certain reasons. Clearly, this just leads to so many places that if you say, well, what about the thing on the hill? And then, it just goes all over. And Billy said to me, he says, I don't know why they just never came down and knocked on the door and asked me what they wanted to know.
Not really their way.
Their way.
Right. I mean, there's so much to this that people have to search it out for themselves, really. And why don't we let them do that right now? Let's go to the wild card line. Rebecca, you're on with Michael Horn. Rebecca, Bakersfield, California. Yeah, you're on with Michael Horn.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Turn
your radio down.
What the solution is? You said I can do something. What can I do? And I would like to start doing that.
Okay.
Is there guidance you can give me with some specific instructions?
Yes.
I've heard of any of this.
On my website, there's a section called Spiritual Teaching, freely available. There's a beautiful thing. It runs about 200 and some odd sentences from Semyaze, Meier's alleged third contact person, called Introduction to the Spiritual Teaching. It sets the stage for us to understand what we are, how we evolve, and it's one of a number of articles that would get you looking at this whole idea, because what this rest says, and this is not a very flashy or glorious answer. I mean, it's not like, well, we'll point ourselves to the North Star. It's about our thinking, our self-responsibility, our taking ourselves away from all the external distractions and entertainment and coming into learning how we think and learning how to think and realizing that every thought we have, whether we're aware or not, leads us forward because it creates our feelings. Those feelings create little thoughts. Those thoughts create our actions. This, on the microcosm, is in our life, and in the macrocosm is our collective life in this world. This is what we have been disempowered from by politics and religion because everything's outside of us. The beliefs, the leaders, the gods, the saints, saviors, and angels. So we transfer our self-responsibility out. Now, some people go, oh, that's a little boring, I want something flashier. No, this is the deal. We have to learn how to do this. There are little groups now forming around the country, people studying a book of Meier's called The Might of the Thoughts. It is an amazing book on how thinking works. It goes way beyond what we have with our self-help and New Age stuff, which looks like kindergarten compared to how this process works and how we step by step, thought by thought, change our lives over time. And there's no quick fix, sorry. It's not a quick fix, folks.
Yeah.
We took time to get in this mess. So that is the essence of the answer in the Meier case.
Okay.
It's up to us.
Yeah, it's not about sort of believing or making an opinion on the case either way. You can look at the material, and that could be something that could help you one way or the other. Well, we're going to take the quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk to Craig in Wisconsin right after this. Welcome back to Coast AM. We're talking with Michael Horn. His website is theyfly.com, linked up right now at coasttocoastam.com. And we're talking about the Billy Meier case, and phone calls are coming in every which way. Let's jump over, as I said we would, to Wisconsin, east of the Rockies. Craig, you're on with Michael Horn.
Hi, Rob and Michael.
Hey.
Hi. Earlier tonight, Michael, you mentioned Michio Kaku and Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yes.
And this is a great conversation. Earlier tonight, I watched the Cosmos series that's based on the original Carl Sagan.
Right.
You know, everything that ever was, everything that is, everything that ever will be is the cosmos.
Right.
And I read English translations of. There's a lot of it that is still in German, and it's interesting to see the history of, you know, where science has been and the state of science today. And it looks like a lot of corrections are going to be made at some point as, you know, scientific discovery progresses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious if you are watching the Cosmos series.
Greg, I'm not. I don't have a TV that I watch. I'm not a snob about it. I'm just too busy. But let me tell you something about science catching up. In 1981, Meier was told that there's an object called a red meteor that's going to slam into basically between the North Sea and Black Sea, Eastern Europe. Gave him all sorts of information on it. 2004, we discovered something called asteroid Apophis. The player said, that's the puppy, it's coming, and unless your scientists deflect it, don't blow it up, but deflect it with a nuclear charge, it will rain down. It'll hit your world more likely in 2036 and not on the first pass in 2029. And they told him how big it was. NASA recently updated their size estimate on Apophis to within 25 meters of what Meier was told. And then the Russians and the Chinese have now, in the last year or so, announced projects to deflect Apophis because that's their neighborhood. NASA is saying, no, there's nothing, it's not going to happen. I keep getting emails and stuff here from people. Can I just say this? Right, Rob, can I make this offer? Because people are asking about this film and stuff. For C2C listeners, anybody who wants this film of mine, I'm going to tell you, the YECRA platform that launched Sirius is going to take this film and run with it in a few weeks. But anybody from C2C that orders this film, I'm going to, as a DVD, I'm going to include another free documentary on the Meier case with it if they just write C2C in their order. So it's my little promo here because people are writing me, and let's just give, buy one, get one free kind of thing.
Okay. Kind
so
of you.
There's a lot of scientific stuff that Meier got, before we didn't. And I put in 55 examples in one of my films. There's 125 corroborations on my website. My blog updates them all the time. This man gets this information. It's accurate. We then start updating our science, and it's corroborating him. But you're not getting these people to acknowledge it.
I know. It's always a challenge. All right, let's go back to the lines. We've got wildcard line. Robert from Lakeport, California. You're on with Michael Horn.
Hi, I'm calling in regard to the earthquakes and about the fracking going on and how long we have to tolerate and endure the trampling on the earth and the Magna Carta to protect the commons, and with the chemtrails making it not rain for 8 months or so when they want to block the refracting evaporation we could have, and then later on making it rain continually because they do a different kind of thing that binds on the molecule, like when they make snow in the ski lodge. And well, maybe we get some help from another galaxy or something.
No.
We could make them stop saying paraquat on the herb. How come we got a hard time making them stop polluting us?
Let me throw you the Meier answer on this, because I recently wrote him asking about some of the extreme weather things and, was it this or that? And he said, unfortunately, 75% of the weather problems, which are going to increase, we're going to have typhoons hit it with winds hitting 400 miles per hour. And the storm frequency stuff, the imbalances, this is from our, decades and decades of, malhandling